Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is part 2 of the instruments, the gauges, the dials, whatever you want to call them, the clocks. I think I mentioned in part 1 that I'd got to the stage where I just can't leave this as it is. I'm going to have to do something with this. So even though it's hidden away in the shell that goes over the top of it, so I'm going to strip this, take the delicate instrumentation out of it, and then I'll zinc plate this, and I'll show you what that looks like when I've done. In fact, what I'll probably do is put it in the blast cabinet first, just get all this surface rubbish off it, corrosion and rust, and then we'll put it in the zinc plating, through the zinc plating process, and see what it looks like when it comes out. So let's get this stripped down for a start. I've taken some photos of this so I can see where these cables go, and so the first thing to do is we've got a couple of lamps in here. These will just pull out, and then that will slide out the back. Put that in the relevant Tupperware. And then we've got this cable with two, no, it's green. One wire's green, one's green with a trace of blue on it, I think. Or might have a trace of something on it, possibly brown. Difficult to say. Oh no, I can see them in there more clearly. We'll have a look when we get those out. But anyway, they're these are the cables that go up to the windings that operate the temperature gauge. So that needs to come out. There's a small clip that needs to be prized away there, and then move that grommet out the way, and then hopefully when we get the two screws out for this assembly, the whole thing should just lift out. I think that's the only two screws holding that assembly in. Okay, so that's our assembly out, and I can see now that these wires are in fact, they're not as dirty as the ones on the outside, were blue and green, and that looks like black and green on that one. Okay, so we've got to be really careful with this assembly. This is the assembly with our windings on, the wire that gets hot, and this is our bimetallic strip that bends and moves the needle. And we've got a little hairspring in there as well, so we need to be very careful with this. So we'll drop that into there for now, put that out of harm's way, and then we can see what we've got left on this inner casing, I suppose you'd call this. So you can see on the inside of here where it's been protected from the elements, it was bright zinced, so there's absolutely no reason that I can see why we shouldn't just put the whole of this, once we've cleaned it up, into the zinc plating process. There's a couple of rubber pieces on here either side, which is just to sort of, when this is bolted in, it just gives it an extra bit of protection from vibration. But I suppose we could actually, for completeness, take these two screws off and and then do those bits separately. I suppose we ought to do that really, and then we can clean underneath these rubber bits as well. So yeah, I'm just thinking out loud while I'm going along really. Let me get the correct spanner and we'll undo that. Be careful we don't bend these. Okay. Okay, there's a bit more to this than I thought. So there's two little brackets on the top, and there's two spacers here, and then there's these rubber. I think this might be one part. Yeah, I think that's a one part rubber piece by the looks of it. Yeah. Okay, and that has got a slight ridge on it, and that ridge was at the top, like it is on that one. So I need to remember that when we put that back together. That's one of the advantages of doing these videos. I can look back at the video, as I mentioned before. So let's try and get this one out. The fear with these sorts of rubber parts is that they go brittle and then they just break when you try and get them off. And I'm guessing these, I don't know whether these parts are available separately, but there we go. You can always try softening these up with some heat to get them off, or possibly even something like penetrating or that type of thing, just to ease them on their way. But that's good, we've got those off. So those are the components of the bracket that sits on the back. These things are always more complicated than they first seem, but we now have that down to its component parts, and not those because they look absolutely fine. Possibly not even the nuts. Yep, they're okay as well. So those two and that are all going into my blast cabinet, and then when we've done that, we'll zinc plate them. So it looks like this Speedo is a very similar story. We've got a couple of lamps, which are obviously designed to come out so that you can change the bulb should they blow. Just a push fit. Go. Okay, that's going to be more difficult to get out because the bulb and the holder's in there, so we might need to actually take that bracket off first in this case. Two bolts, and then the same arrangement as we had last time by the looks of it. Well, this one appears to be stuck. There we go. The instrument itself. This is where JIS screwdrivers really come into their own. These really tight, small screws that have never been out since when it was put together in 1976. In the case of this one, it just gripped the screw so well. He says it comes out. Put my finger on top of there just to hold that in place. It's always worth taking your time with these things. If you go to like a bull in a china shop, you end up turning the heads off one of these, camming this out, and then you know, you're into it for another half an hour while you try and cut a groove across it. Okay, so that now just lifts out. It's pretty obvious where that goes in, so I'm not going to bother taking any photos of that. So that is our whole assembly out of there, which we're going to take a closer look at in a bit, because I want to reset this to 0 as I discussed in the last episode. So we'll take a closer look at that in a minute. I'll just pop back in the Tupperware for now. So that leaves us with our case. The only problem I've got with this, I suppose, is, and in fact the Taco one as well, is the Taco one. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a what looks like some kind of stamp in red there and some kind of stamp in blue on that one, which I'm going to lose, of course, when I re-zinc these, but you know, it is what it is. I don't want to leave them like this. It's not like that's something that you can see. It's not like the red dot on the caliper that I had to recreate when I did those, so I'm not too worried about that. Okay, so as I mentioned in the last video, I was going to zero the odometer or the tachometer, read the milometer, which I've now done. Well, I say I've done it, it's all zeros and a 7 at the end, but that's okay, I'm not too worried about that. So my first thought when I took this apart, this is just the mechanism, it's a close-up obviously, but this is the mechanism that I took out, and you can see, get my camera angle right, yeah, there's two bits of folded over metal there which hold this spindle in, and you've got, it's a bit clearer on this side, the same on the other side, you can see it there and there, and they hold the spindle in which holds this whole assembly in. I didn't really want to start messing around taking that out if I could avoid it, because I was bothered about damaging the rest or bending this this framework. So what I've actually ended up doing is I managed to get this circlip off. So that little, there's a little brass circlip, brass or bronze circlip there, and next to that is this, I don't know what this is, like a washer with a spring behind it, but what you can't quite see, you might be able to see down there, yeah, you can just see it if I move the spring out of the way. Yeah, there is another circlip in there. So what you have to do is take off this circlip. Once you've got that circlip off, this, which is spring loaded, comes all the way down here, and then you can see that other circlip, and then you take that circlip off, and then once that's off, each of these rotors will move, not very much, only a couple of millimeters, because it can only go from basically there to there, because that piece of metal stops it, but it's all it needs. So what I did was I moved the whole lot to the left, and then starting with, you can't really zero that one as such because it's connected into this gear here, but it doesn't really matter about that one. So I moved the whole lot to the left so that this one was disengaged from here and here, turned that to 0, and then what I did was I got my existing dial, faceplate I should say, and put that over. It's quite difficult when you're trying to do some, I've actually got a camera focusing through a magnifying glass. So, oops. So I know when I put the dial back on, it's going to read all zeros. And then it's just a question of, once you've done that one, move that one over to the right and hold it. Then you do the same with that one, make sure it's free from that one and that one. Turn it to 0, push it across. Same with this, same with this, same with this. Then when it's all done, you have to hold the whole lot over to the right so they don't disengage with each other. And then it's a question of getting these two circlips back in. So there's one behind there. There you go, you can see it a little bit more clearer, hopefully there. And then this circlip has to go back on as well. To get those on and off, I used these, which is just a pair of flat nose pliers. There we go. And I just bent the ends in slightly so it made a really good contact, so that I could grip that little circlet. So as I said, I'm not trying to rip anybody off with this. I'm resetting it to 0 because although I'm not completely rebuilding the engine, this is going to be my bike. It's I'm not intending to go and sell it, and if I do, I should make it perfectly clear that I've reset this back to zeros. I've got no qualms in doing that because there's absolutely no mileage record on this bike at all as to what the mileage would have been. There's just no documentation for it whatsoever, and as we've already discovered, that these clocks are actually the wrong ones, not the original ones off this bike anyway, because they've got the blue dials, not the green dials. So yeah, if you need to do that, there you go. That's how you do that. Let's move on to the next bit. Right, I've managed to get the little silver bezel off from the case. It's in a bit of a mess, to be honest. That is obviously where I've been having a go at it, but it was in quite a state anyway. It's got a load of sticky stuff all over it. But I can clean that up. I'll go in the parts washer and then get some brake cleaner and stuff on there. I'm sure that'll come up. And then what I'm hoping to be able to do is wear all this edge that's been levered up with a screwdriver. If I get some pliers, I'm hoping I can actually straighten all this up so it's all standing upright. Then when it's standing upright, it goes back on here. It should be an easier job to carefully bend it all back over. The top surfaces that you see, half of it's all right, half of it is a bit dented and marked, but for all I know, you might be able to buy these. Somebody might make them, I don't know. I'll need to look into that. If not, we'll have to make the best of what we've got, and we'll have to have the nicer bit showing at the top of the clocks, I guess. But yeah, we'll come on to that. Right, so what we've got left is the bezel, which needs painting, or the cover that needs painting. We've got a sealing O-ring here, which I don't think is actually stuck to that in a part, and then this just pulls out like so. There's a little location dowel on there, little location mark on the rubber, which just sits in that little cutout together when you come to it. And then that leaves us with the glass, which again, there's another rubber ring, another rubber sealing washer ring, whatever you want to call it, in there. So do I want to disturb this and take this out and risk damaging it, or do I want to mask it? Let's have a look, see what we've got. That seems to be, it feels like it's bonded onto the glass. I'm guessing it's not. I'm guessing it's just stuck on it. But I'm tempted not to mess with that too much. I really don't want to break this glass. So just to show that things don't always go according to plan when you're doing restorations, this set of overlays that I ordered from Classic Gauges were for a 1976 GL1000, which is what I've got, hence the reason I ordered these gauges. These are to cover up the blue faces which came with this bike, which are incorrect because the blue faces are for the 77 model, not the 76. And in my naivety, I just assumed that all they'd done was change the colour of these gauges, and that was it. Turns out that's not the case. So the fuel gauge is fine. I've offered that up. That works perfectly well. Temperature gauge is the same, and also the rev counter, no problem with any of those. That's all fine. However, with the speedometer overlay, there is a problem, because if I put that over there, I put all these up just to check them. and as you can see, that doesn't fit. The cutout for the milometer is far too far up the overlay. If I actually line it up, you can see how far out it is. So my initial reaction was, well, okay, something wrong with the overlay, better get in contact with Classic Gauges, which I did. But in the meantime, while I was waiting for a reply, it suddenly dawned on me that maybe, for whatever reason, the instrument inside this was different, and the cutout in this is the right place, but not the right place for this particular year of gauges. Anyway, it turns out when I spoke to Classic Gauges, they're very helpful. They did send me a diagram of the exact spacings of these for the 77 and the 76. Turns out that for whatever reason, the 77 milometer is slightly further down towards the centre of the gauge than on the 76. So what they've offered to do is to do a one-off recreation of what effectively is this gauge, but in this colour. So in other words, they're going to use a 77 cutout template, which they would normally do in blue, but they're going to do it in the apple green so that they line up. So yeah, that's worth knowing if you're ever looking at doing that. So obviously I've got to wait for that to arrive before I can do anything else with that. Okay, so the other issue I've had today, again, just to show how sometimes these restorations don't go according to plan, is I've had my first set of gauge covers and bits and pieces bracketry in the zinc plating solution, and it's just not gone very well at all for some reason. So if I just turn this off a second, I have no idea what's happened here, but that is a sort of dull, weird looking grey colour. Absolutely not what I was expecting at all. Definitely not shiny and bright in any shape or form. So I don't quite know what's happened there. I can hazard a guess. These plates were very cheap off eBay. These are the sacrificial anodes, if you like. These have only been used once, and that one has completely worn away. That was a square plate. So I won't be using those again. Also, this whole kit, this whole setup that I've got here, all these different solutions are now quite old. I've done at least, well, I've done the whole, well, you can't see it, but under there is the SRX 600. The whole of that bike, every single plate and fastener that you can think of was done using this setup. And they're only little 5 litre buckets, these. So I think it's probably time for me to bite the bullet and buy a new solution, and some of these other bits and pieces. Things like that one, which is the acid pickle, that one's probably okay. The degrease, that probably needs changing. The electrolyte definitely needs replacing. The green surfactant, I think I've got some more of that one anyway. And then the passivate should be okay. Yeah, so I think I've just taken it a bit too far with using old solutions. I think that's what it boils down to. That plus those zinc plates that I should have bought some decent ones instead of those cheap ones off the internet. And I think the other issue I've probably got is I did leave these plates in for a few days, and you are meant to take them out when you're not using the solution, otherwise it just the zinc comes off them and just sits in the solution, which I don't think has helped. So yeah, we've come to a bit of a halt with the gauges at the moment, because obviously I've got to wait for that new overlay to come, and also I've got to get a new zinc solution before I can go any further as well. So I think I'll call it a day there on this video. If you do want to know about the zinc plating process in general, I have done a how-to on that. I'll try and put a link somewhere up here for that, so you can go watch that in the meantime. And I shall wait for these bits and pieces to arrive, and then we'll get on with the next video. So thanks very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe down below, and I will see you in the next video.